My name is Logan, I'm 19 years old, and I've just embarked on my journey as a medical student in New York City. I originally come from Texas, Dallas, to be specific, where my father works as a surgeon at a university hospital and my mother manages our household. After graduating from high school, I moved to New York about 4 months ago to live independently. I had worked extremely hard to gain admission into medical school this past July, largely inspired by my dad's career. But despite my academic achievement, I haven't had the chance to experience the typical college life I always imagined. I dreamed of making new friends, joining student organizations, and enjoying campus events, but financial constraints have made that difficult. While my parents cover my tuition, I'm responsible for all my living expenses. To make ends meet, I've taken on multiple part-time jobs, tutoring, event staffing, and bartending, squeezing them in outside of class hours. Even with all that effort, balancing rent, bills, and groceries has been a monthly struggle. I often rotate through different jobs to match my unpredictable class schedule, usually working weekends. It's been draining, both mentally and physically. I find myself exhausted during lectures, and when I finally get home late at night, I barely have the energy left to study. Lately, I've been falling behind in my courses and growing more anxious about the possibility of repeating the academic year. My studies should be my top priority, but it feels like survival has taken over. In a moment of desperation, I reached out to my mom to ask if they could send even a small amount to help out. Since my dad is almost always working, my mom typically handles the finances. And though he earns a decent salary, my mom told me that covering my tuition already pushed their budget to the limit. There just wasn't any extra to spare. Her answer left me feeling trapped. Most of my peers who live on their own still receive some financial support from their families. I envied that, but I stayed silent and chose to keep grinding. When midterms arrived, my lack of preparation caught up with me. I hadn't studied enough and ended up having to retake several exams. Thankfully, I managed to complete all the retests by early August. Afterward, summer break began, and I planned to take on as many shifts as possible during the long holiday to save up for the upcoming semester. My goal was to focus more on academics after the break, which meant cutting back my work hours. To do that, I'd need to save aggressively now. I made a decision to slash my personal expenses. I'd rely on cheap instant noodles, bread, and discounted packaged meals to get by. For transportation, I'd stick to riding my bike everywhere instead of spending money on public transit. Growing up in a financially stable household, I never imagined I'd one day be budgeting every dollar and living in near poverty. Adjusting to this new lifestyle has been jarring. Despite everything, I stayed in touch with a friend from college through texting. Seeing their cheerful photos and updates made me feel a pang of sadness. We were attending the same university, yet our lives looked so different. They often invited me to hang out, but I always had to turn them down. I simply didn't have the time or the money. "Let's go somewhere that doesn't cost anything," one classmate once messaged me. "Can't," I replied. "I'm working every day. Plus, I'm heading back home for the holiday season, so I'll be out of town." Concerned, they responded, "Are you sure you're all right? You always look so worn out in class. I think you might be overworking yourself." "I can handle it. I need to cover my own expenses," I said. "Let's hang out when school starts again." After sending that reply, I headed to the bar where I had a shift that evening. It was a busy Friday night, packed with customers and constant drink orders. While I was carrying a tray of drinks, I suddenly felt lightheaded. That's the last thing I remember. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. The doctor explained that I had collapsed due to severe exhaustion and poor nutrition. They gave me 4 fluids and discharged me the same day. As soon as I got home, I called my boss to apologize. He told me that when I fainted, I was too out of it to react when I fainted, so my boss immediately called for an ambulance. While I was being taken care of, he also contacted my parents. He apologized later, saying he'd taken on a lot of my shifts recently and that I'd probably been pushing myself too hard. "You need to take it easy for the rest of the month," he told me gently. Although I appreciated the concern, I knew that taking time off meant a dip in my income. On the subway ride back home from the hospital, I stared blankly out the window, my thoughts racing. Should I try to find more tutoring gigs to make up for the lost pay? I felt aimless. I was supposed to be working at the bar again the next evening, But now I had an unexpected day off. I stayed in bed to rest, my body still weak. When I checked my phone, I noticed a message from a friend that I must have missed while I was unconscious. I replied, letting them know what had happened. After hearing about my situation, my friend insisted on coming over. He brought a few bags of groceries with him and even cooked a simple spaghetti dinner for us. As we ate together, we ended up talking about the harsh reality of living on your own. When I mentioned that I wasn't receiving any financial support from my parents beyond tuition, he looked genuinely surprised. "That's why you're working so much?" he asked. "But your dad's a doctor. Shouldn't he be helping you out?" I talked to my mom. She told me they're barely managing with my tuition alone, I explained. "You're an only child though, right?" he said. "Maybe if you asked again, they'd send you something, even a little?" I shook my head. "I already tried. Mom said even a small amount isn't possible." "That doesn't sound right," he said, frowning. "I mean, not to jump to conclusions, but is it possible your dad's sick and can't work anymore?" That suggestion caught me off guard. My father is a surgeon. He used to drive a high-end car. We live in a beautiful neighborhood, and I went to private schools my entire life. Why would money suddenly be tight now? The more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. I sent a message to my mom right away. "Is everything okay with you and Dad?" After a short delay, she responded, "We're fine." But her words didn't comfort me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being kept from me. Since I had already planned to visit home for the holidays, I made up my mind to talk to them in person. Before leaving, I thanked my friend for his help. "I'm expecting souvenirs when you get back," he teased with a smile. I felt deeply grateful to have someone like him in my life. When the holiday break came around, I booked the cheapest flight I could find and made my way home. I could only stay for a night and a day due to my job, but I was still looking forward to it. My parents welcomed me at the door. My dad looked startled when he saw me. "You've lost so much weight," he said, concerned. I hadn't realized how much I'd changed until I saw their expressions. My mom also fell silent when she looked at me. For lunch, she had prepared a meal with salad, soup, and chicken wings. It had been a long time since the three of us sat down together like that. As we began to eat, my father looked at me closely.
"You really look thin. Are you eating properly?" he asked. I decided to be honest. "Not really. This is the nicest meal I've had in a while." "What do you usually eat?" "Mostly instant noodles, bread, and whatever discounted pre-packaged food I can find." "What about food from the campus cafeteria?" he asked. "It's too expensive for me." "Really? How much is it?" "About $5 per meal." He looked confused. "Isn't the money I've been sending enough to cover that?" His question stunned me. "What money?" I asked. "I haven't received anything." My dad looked completely shocked. "Wait, you mean you haven't gotten any money at all?" "For 4 months." "Nothing," I replied. "Have you really been sending it?" "I asked your mom to transfer $2,000 to your account every month." I was speechless. Mom told me there wasn't any money left over, that things were tight financially. My dad furrowed his brows, clearly confused. "That's not true. We got enough to support you." He turned to my mom. "Paisley, have you been sending Logan the money like I asked you to?" She kept her eyes down and didn't respond. I began to feel uneasy. Was Dad really still working? Or was there something they hadn't told me? "I've been working as usual," my father reassured me. That was good to hear, but it made everything more confusing. If the money was there, why wasn't I receiving any? My father asked again more firmly, "Paisley, what's going on?" Still, she stayed silent. "Please don't ignore this. Just tell us what's happening," he pressed. At last, my mother spoke quietly. "I haven't sent him any money." We were both stunned. "What? You didn't send anything to Logan?" She nodded slowly. "Why?" My father asked, clearly frustrated. "There were just too many things I needed to pay for," she said vaguely. "But we've already paid off our mortgage," Dad pointed out. Finally, she confessed. "I kept the money for myself." I was speechless. I read somewhere that medical students can earn more than the average student by tutoring. I thought you'd manage somehow. I didn't realize it was this serious, she said, her voice calm. My dad cut in, clearly angry now. Logan's job called us recently. They said you collapsed from overwork, and now I see how much weight you've lost. What? Logan collapsed? When did this happen? Apparently. My dad hadn't heard anything about it. I explained. Yeah, but it wasn't too bad. My father turned back to my mother. Paisley, why didn't you tell me? I was afraid you'd find out, she admitted. I never sent the money, my mother finally admitted, and my father's face turned red with disbelief. This is beyond comprehension, he said sharply. Logan had to push himself to the point of collapsing because he couldn't afford to live. I didn't do it to hurt anyone, Mom muttered, completely unbothered by the weight of what she'd done. Then what did you do with all the money? Dad asked, not hiding his frustration. After a moment of silence, she responded quietly, I'm in debt. The words hit hard. My mother, the one who always seemed so put together, was confessing to something unthinkable. The money went into repaying what I owe, she added. How much are we talking about? My dad asked, stunned. She didn't lift her eyes. Around $100,000. I felt my heart skip a beat. Dad's breath caught. How did it get to that point? I got involved in gambling, she said. It started about 2 years ago, just to kill time. At first, I'd win now and then. It felt good. I thought I could handle it. But eventually, I was going more often, betting more each time. I couldn't stop. I couldn't relate. I never even tried gambling, but the way she talked about it, I could tell it consumed her. I was always trying to win back what I'd lost, but the losses just kept piling up. I even dipped into our savings. You mean it wasn't just a debt? Dad asked in disbelief. I used about $30,000 from our savings, she confessed. I stopped before it got worse. I was afraid you'd find out. Dad looked completely drained. If you had just come to me, we could have figured something out together. Maybe a part-time job could have helped pay it back gradually. I refuse to work part-time, she snapped. I've been a housewife forever. I can't just jump into a job now. That's why I turned to payday loans. Her words felt like a slap in the face. She chose to borrow from high-interest lenders instead of taking any responsibility. And now the interest is suffocating me, she added. The more I borrowed, the deeper I sank. Dad stared at her for a long time. Are you still gambling? He asked with a grim look. Yes, she admitted. I don't know what else to do. I was hoping you'd help me pay everything off. Her tone was almost hopeful, like she expected him to say yes without question. But he didn't. This is my retirement money, he said. Let's end this marriage. What? Divorce? I was stunned. She looked absolutely crushed, as though her whole world had just collapsed. You kept gambling even while Logan was struggling, knowing the situation you put him in. Dad continued. You took out loans, blew through savings, and still didn't stop. I can't stay married to someone who would jeopardize their family like that. Tears streamed down her face. Please, I'll quit. I promise. Just give me one more chance. But Dad stayed calm. This isn't just about promises anymore. You need real help. Therapy. Long-term treatment. Gambling addiction is serious. Most people relapse without proper care. I'm not an addict. I can quit any time, she protested. No, if we stay like this, everything we've built will vanish. I can't let Logan carry that weight. I have to do what's right for both of us. She insisted again, I'll stop tomorrow, but her words rang hollow. She didn't seem to fully understand the damage already done. Then Dad added, if I cover your debts, there won't be any division of our assets. She balked at that. That's not fair. If you don't pay the debt, the creditors might freeze your accounts. He reminded her. She fell silent. This wasn't how I imagined my trip home would go. The tension was unbearable. Dad, maybe we shouldn't talk about divorce right now. Take some time and think about it, I suggested. He looked at me with kind but firm eyes. I'm sorry, Logan, but this decision wasn't made in haste. After that emotional lunch, I shut myself in my room. The arguments continued outside, Mom yelling, Dad holding his ground. Exhausted by school stress and family chaos, I fell asleep despite it all. The next morning, Mom looked like she hadn't slept a wink. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I had planned to stay another night, but the heavy mood made me want to leave early. Dad drove me to the airport. Mom hadn't agreed to the divorce yet. She apologized quietly before I left. "I'm sorry for all this, Logan." "It's not your fault," I replied, unsure if I even believed those words. Dad turned to me. "From now on, I'll deposit your allowance directly into your account. You don't need to worry anymore." "Thanks, Dad," I said, genuinely relieved. Back in New York, I threw myself into work. Summer passed quickly, but my mind never left home. Months later, I got the update. Mom had finally accepted the divorce. After countless arguments, she gave in. Dad took full responsibility for her debts, and they didn't split any assets. My emotions were mixed. Watching my parents split up was hard, but at the same time, things started improving. With Dad's support, I didn't have to overwork myself anymore. I had more time to study and even catch up with friends. Later, I heard from Mom's side of the family. Despite the divorce being caused by her gambling, she still returned to the slot machines almost daily. The debts piled up again, and no one could bail her out this time. With no other option, she finally began working part-time and started therapy. She's now in treatment, facing her addiction. I hope she finds her way out of it, for her own sake.